The letter arrives on a Tuesday, not addressed to you, addressed to your father, a government courier, a man in a gray uniform who does not make eye contact and does not wait for a response, hands it to your father at the door of your family's apartment in Sariwon, the capital of North Hwanghae Province, and leaves before your father has finished unfolding it. You are 17 years old. Your father reads the letter once. He folds it along the original crease. He places it in the center of the kitchen table, the way you place things when you need them to exist somewhere other than your hands. He does not say anything. He goes to the window. He looks at the street below for approximately 2 minutes. Then he goes to his chair. Your mother starts dinner 1 hour earlier than usual. The three of you eat. Nobody mentions the letter. The letter contains your name, your assigned unit, your departure date, which is 3 weeks from today. It contains these facts in the language of administrative procedure, which is the only language the government uses when communicating things that are not, technically, requests. You know what it is. You have known it was coming since you were 14, and your name went into the draft register. Since you were 16, and you stood in a line at a government building, while a doctor checked your eyes and your teeth and your flat feet, and circled things on a form that would follow you for the next decade. Since every man you have ever known disappeared into a bus one morning and came back 10 years later with different eyes. You knew. You just did not know which Tuesday. Now you know. Your best friend from school, a boy named Stanley, who lives 3 floors below you and whose actual name is Han Jae-won, but who you have called Stanley since you were 9 years old because he read an English book he found in the market and insisted on being called something foreign for an entire summer, and the name stuck. Stanley comes up that evening. He sits on the floor of your room. He does not ask about the letter because he already knows about the letter, because in a building like yours, everybody knows about everybody's Tuesday within an hour of the Tuesday happening. He says how long. You tell him 10 years minimum. Possibly more. He is quiet for a moment. He says I will still be here, he says. You tell him you know. He says I will write you. You tell him letters go through the political officer. He says then I will write carefully. You look at him. He is not being funny. He is being Stanley, which has always meant the same thing, which is that he will find the version of the thing that is available, and he will do that version with everything he has. 3 weeks later, a military bus idles in the district square before dawn. You climb in without looking back. The bus drives north for 8 hours. Level 2. The base. The training base in Pyongyang province sits at high elevation, surrounded by pine forest and bare stone ridgelines that look, at dusk, like they were placed there specifically to communicate that you are now somewhere from which the direction back is less relevant than it used to be. You arrive with 41 other boys from 3 districts. A drill sergeant meets the bus at the gate. He is not loud. Loud would imply that volume is required to convey the weight of his authority. He simply points toward a concrete building and says 60 men share one room. You go to the room. Iron bunk beds bolted to the walls in 3 tiers. The room has no heating. Wind moves through the window frames with the consistency of something that has been doing this for a long time and has no reason to stop. You sleep in your full uniform. Padded jacket. Socks. Everything. Wake up is 4:30 in the morning. You run 5 kilometers before sunrise, carrying a wooden rifle replica. Actual weapons are issued only during supervised training. A sergeant tells you a soldier who cannot suffer with wood is not ready to fire steel. He says this the way a person says something they have said several hundred times and have decided contains enough truth to keep saying. Food is served twice a day. Morning, corn porridge. Thin, unsalted, a metal bowl that holds almost nothing. Evening, the same metal bowl, the same corn porridge. Within 2 weeks, hunger stops feeling like a signal. It becomes background, a permanent condition of the environment, like the wind through the window frames and the 4:30 wake-up call. Every Saturday evening, your company gathers for Sangwal Chonghwa, the weekly self-criticism session. Soldiers sit in rows. Each man stands and confesses a shortcoming from the previous week. Other soldiers criticize him. Then he criticizes someone else before sitting. The political officer observes from a chair at the front and writes in a notebook that everyone can see and nobody looks at directly. Your first time, you confess that you lost concentration during the 3rd reading of the weekly political text. Vague enough to be unchallengeable, specific enough to sound honest. You arrived at this formulation by watching the 2 sessions before yours and identifying the precise frequency and type of confession that produce the shortest follow-up and the most neutral notation from the political officer. You are 17 years old, and you have already understood the most important operational skill in the Korean People's Army. It is not marksmanship, it is calibration. The section leader writes something down. After 12 weeks of basic training, you are assigned to an infantry unit. A single narrow stripe goes on your collar. I Byong. Private. You are a unit of manpower in a system that does not particularly need to know your name. You learn this immediately. Then you learn how to survive inside it. Level 3. The patrol. You are 20 years old, 3 years in, assigned to an infantry battalion in South Hwangha Province, stationed near Hoju, approximately 50 kilometers north of the demilitarized zone. From the high ground on your patrol route, on clear days, you can see distant mountains to the south. Nobody comments on what is beyond them. Your weapon is the Type 88 assault rifle, the KPA's standard infantry arm, modeled on the Soviet AK-74 and produced domestically since the late 1980s. You are issued 30 rounds per month for live fire training. Every round is logged by serial number against your name. A single round discrepancy requires a report signed by your squad leader, countersigned by the company political officer, and filed with the regiment. You have never had a discrepancy. You patrol a 6-kilometer perimeter stretch twice daily. The terrain does not change. The rhythm does not change. The mountains to the south are always there on clear days. You have decided not to look at them more than once per patrol, because once is enough to register that they are still there, and more than once is the beginning of something you cannot afford. One afternoon you draw paired patrol duty with a soldier from a neighboring company. His name is Oh Guang, 22 years old, from Hamhung. He is the kind of person who talks when there is nothing to say, which in this environment is unusual, and which you immediately identify as a risk factor you have not been assigned to manage, and that you now are managing by proximity. During a rest stop at the midpoint, he sits on a stone wall and stares at the tree line. He says, "Do you think about what you will do after?" You tell him you have not decided. He nods. Then he mentions, in the same even tone, that a cousin works at a steel facility in Chongjin, and the plant has not run at full capacity in 2 years because electricity is rationed in the afternoon. He says it the way people say things when they have carried them too long, and the weight has shifted from something to be managed to something that comes out when the tree line gives you something to look at that is not another person's face. Back at base, you write his name in the weekly observation log. Expressed concern regarding industrial conditions in the civilian sector. Likely family-related anxiety. Monitoring for recurrence. The safest possible language. Not protecting him. Managing the risk between what he said and what it could become in someone else's paperwork. If you write nothing and someone else writes something, your silence becomes part of the record. If you write this, his comment is contained in the most innocuous framing available, and the notation is yours, which means you control the first version of the story. Oh Guang is not transferred. Whether your phrasing contributed to that, or whether his comment simply was not significant enough to pursue, you will never know. That uncertainty is something you carry forward. It sits alongside the mountains you have decided not to look at more than once per patrol. Your quarterly evaluation uses one word: observant. In the Korean People's Army, observant is not a compliment about perception. It is confirmation that you have understood what the system actually requires of you. Stanley writes from Sariwon. The letter arrives 3 weeks after he sent it, opened and resealed with institutional care. He writes about the market. About a film that came to the community cinema. About your mother, who he sees occasionally, who looks well, who asked him to say hello. He writes nothing that could be interpreted as anything. He is learning too. You write back. You describe the landscape, the pine forest, the elevation, the way the light hits the ridgelines in early morning. You describe nothing that could be interpreted as anything. Between the two of you, across 2 letters that contain nothing dangerous, you have managed to say that you are both still here and that you still know how to find each other in the space between the words. That is enough. Level 4. The section. You are 22 years old, 3 stripes, Pyongyang, section leader. You are now responsible for 8 soldiers, all younger, most in their first or second year. You inspect boots. You inspect weapon barrels. You check that every soldier's political study notebook contains a minimum of 3 written entries per week. A notebook below that threshold is a documentation failure. Documentation failures reflect directly on you. This is the architecture of accountability in the Korean People's Army. It does not flow upward. It flows to whoever signed the document most recently. Every Saturday, your company conducts Sangwal Chonghua. As section leader, you no longer sit inside the circle. You sit at the edge and observe. You track who hesitates, who confesses too quickly, who looks at the floor during someone else's criticism. These are the signals the political officer is reading. You learn to read them first, not because you intend to act on them before he does, because knowing what he is reading tells you what to write in your own weekly summary, and what to write in your weekly summary is the primary mechanism by which your section's ideological rating is maintained. One of your soldiers, Pak Chun, 18 years old, from a farming county in South Pyongyang, consistently struggles. He confesses minor things in a flat tone that the political officer reads as inattentiveness. Not dangerous inattentiveness, the kind that accumulates over weeks into a pattern that eventually requires a response. After the third consecutive week, the company political officer, Lieutenant Nam Gi-ho, pulls you aside. He opens his notebook to a page where Pak Chun's name appears under a heading that translates, approximately, as reduced ideological engagement, pattern not isolated. He asks what you have observed. You describe Pak Chun as a soldier who performs reliably during physical training, but struggles translating ideological study into active verbal participation. You suggest structured supplementary sessions with a senior section member. Lieutenant Nam writes it down. He says you see clearly. Pak Chun completes 4 weeks of supplementary political education. By month's end, his Sangwal Chonghua performances are indistinguishable from anyone else's. You do not know whether your framing protected him or whether you simply gave the political officer something actionable while your section's rating stayed intact. The two outcomes are not mutually exclusive. That is precisely what makes the question difficult to examine. At the end of the year, your company commander writes one word at the bottom of your evaluation: reliable. In the Korean People's Army, no word in a service file carries more weight. Reliable means you can be given problems that the system creates and trusted to produce outcomes that the system requires, without generating documentation that requires additional management. You are reliable. You will be reliable for a very long time. Level 5, the NCO. You are 25 years old. A selection officer visited your battalion during the quarterly review cycle. He spent 2 days reading files. On the third morning, your name was on a list. You did not request this. You were not consulted. 1 chevron above your stripes. HASA, non-commissioned officer. The distinction matters more than it appears. Conscripts pass through the enlisted ranks and are discharged at the end of their mandatory service. NCOs inhabit the institution permanently. You are now part of the structure itself. The institution has decided you are more valuable inside it than outside it, which is a specific kind of honor and a specific kind of sentence that are, in the Korean People's Army, the same thing. You are reassigned to a mechanized infantry regiment in North Hwanghae Province. Your responsibilities include training oversight for 2 squads and weekly coordination meetings with both the company political officer and the company commander. These meetings reveal a dynamic invisible from below. The company political officer holds equal authority to the company commander on all ideological matters. The commander manages operations, deployments, maintenance, training calendars. The political officer manages everything else. Every operational decision passes through an implicit question. Does this create an ideological documentation problem? If yes, it is not blocked. It is adjusted. The word adjusted is doing significant work in that sentence, and you now understand exactly what it means, because you are in the room where the adjustment happens. This year, your regiment participates in a combined arms exercise near the DMZ perimeter. 11 days. Artillery coordination, armored vehicles. Live rounds on days 4 and 8. On the 6th night, a private fractures his ankle during a night march. The battalion medical officer assesses at 2 in the morning under a tarp. Evacuation required. The request clears the chain in under 30 minutes. You log the incident. Time, name, injury. Approval reference. The following morning during the exercise briefing, The regimental political officer mentions the evacuation in passing. He does not criticize it. He asks one question. Was the private's training load appropriate in the days leading up to the march? Everyone looks at the training calendar. Your name is on the header of every page. You describe the load as standard protocol for the exercise phase. You cite the approved framework by document number and issue date. The political officer writes something down and moves on. Nothing comes of it. But that question, asked once, written once, filed somewhere, stays with you. Because an answer that satisfies today is not the same as an answer that is forgotten tomorrow. Files are permanent. Your name on that calendar is a reference point that can be reopened whenever anyone needs one. You reorganize your entire filing system within 2 weeks of returning from the exercise. No training activity, regardless of size, sits under an ambiguous document code again. You do not do this out of fear. You do it because you now understand that the distance between a filing inconsistency and a career notation is not as large as it should be. Stanley's last letter mentioned he is working at a machine parts factory in Sariwon. The work is stable. He did not describe the factory's output capacity or its power supply situation. He described the walk to work and the smell of the river in early morning. You understand why. You write back about the elevation of the regiment's new position and the way snow sits differently at this altitude than it did in Pyongyang. Between the two of you, across years of letters that contain nothing dangerous, you have built a private language, made entirely of landscape and weather, and the smell of rivers in early morning. It is the only honest conversation available to either of you. You have decided it is enough. Level 6. The Commission. You are 33 years old. Most KPA officers enter through dedicated academies. Kim Il-sung Military University in Pyongyang, or the Mangyongdae Revolutionary School, which takes students from elite families at age 11 and produces commissioned officers at 22 or 23. Rising from the NCO ranks to a commission at 33 is uncommon. It happens when a political officer reviewing a file across many years determines that ideological reliability and administrative consistency merit elevation. Captain Nam Gi-ho, the same political officer who pulled you aside about Pak Chun 11 years ago, wrote the recommendation. You did not know, until after the commission was confirmed, a single gold bar on your collar. So we, Second Lieutenant. You attend a 12-week officer integration course at the Gangwon Province Military Officers School. Strategy, logistics, command protocol, political education structured for commissioned personnel. At officer level, political education is not recitation, it is analysis. Officers study the 10 principles of monolithic ideology weekly and submit written analyses of how each principle applies to their command role. Analyses are read aloud. The group responds. The political instructor evaluates both content and delivery. One officer in your cohort, Yoon Chol-jin, sharp and from a military family in Pyongyang, delivers his analysis with excessive confidence. He provides historical context not in the assigned reading. He cites a 1975 Kim Il-sung speech unprompted. The political instructor thanks him without expression. 2 days later, Yoon Chol-jin is called to a private meeting with the senior political officer. After the meeting, he is quieter. His subsequent analyses are shorter, considerably less distinctive. When your own analysis is evaluated, the instructor says, clear, appropriate, measured. At officer level, performance that exceeds what the system asked for is not an asset. It is a question. Questions at this level take weeks to surface consequences. Never in the moment they are first asked. Measured costs you nothing. At this rank, that is the only rational goal. Stanley writes to tell you he is married. Her name is Park Soo-yeon. She works at the same factory. The letter contains a description of a meal she made, the specific spices, the way the kitchen smelled. He is telling you, in the only language available, that he is happy. You read it 3 times. You write back about the architecture of the training school, the proportions of the lecture halls, the height of the ceilings. You do not write about Yoon Chol-jin. Some things cannot travel safely, even in the language you have built together. Level 7. The Command. You are 38 years old. You command a company of 107 soldiers in an armored regiment near Wonsan on the east coast. From a gap in the hills at the edge of the base perimeter, You can see the Sea of Japan on clear days. Your soldiers do not comment on it. Neither do you. Your name appears on documents that travel to the regimental and occasionally divisional level, operational plans, monthly readiness certifications, logistics summaries. Each document is a data point in a record that someone above you can always access. You understand this, the way you understand the weight of the basic load your soldiers carry, not consciously, every moment, but as a permanent condition of the environment. This year, your company is evaluated by an inspection team from the KPA General Staff Department. Officers with no unit affiliation, who answer directly to Pyongyang. 10 days of observation, weapon maintenance, political session attendance, documentation completeness, drill performance. On the 7th day, one inspector requests your ammunition usage records for the previous 6 months. You produce them within the hour. He marks 3 entries where the recorded round count does not align with the range master's separate log. 17 rounds across 3 sessions. They were expended in a supplementary drill logged under a different document classification. A filing issue, not an inventory discrepancy. You explain it. You produce the supplementary documentation. You give the reference numbers verbally and in writing. He writes everything down. He moves on. The evaluation debrief. Satisfactory with minor administrative variance noted. You have passed. Satisfactory. Minor. Administrative. Variance noted. You parse each word the way a surgeon reads a scan. Satisfactory means you passed. Minor means it was not escalated. Administrative means the explanation was accepted. Variance noted means it is in the file permanently. Over the following 2 weeks, you reorganize your entire filing system again. Not out of fear, out of the specific knowledge that minor administrative variances have a tendency, years later, to become the sentence that precedes a larger sentence in a document you are not in the room to respond to. You are now 38 years old, and you have spent 21 years learning to read the space between words in official documents. This is, you have decided, the primary professional skill of a Korean People's Army officer. Not tactics, not leadership, not logistics. Reading the space between words. Level 8. Pyongyang. You are 44 years old. You are brought to Pyongyang. 4 silver stars on your epaulette. Dare Young, Colonel. Assigned to the Operations Directorate within the KPA General Staff Department. You have a driver named Choe Man-sik, who takes the same 4 routes on rotation and rarely speaks. An apartment in Moranbong District. Your children attend a school reserved for families at this rank. Your work involves comparing readiness assessments from field commands across 3 military districts against independent analysis. Logistics data, signals intelligence. Satellite imagery that arrives in a classified folder every Tuesday and Friday. The reported figures are consistently optimistic. Carefully so. A unit reports 94% equipment readiness. The imagery suggests 78. Another reports full quarterly training completion. The fuel allocation data suggests 81%. The gaps are architectural, built into every level below you, and passed upward as a quiet institutional agreement that the numbers reaching Pyongyang must tell a story of strength, regardless of what the actual numbers say. You have spent 27 years inside this system. You know exactly where the gaps live. Your superior, Major General Kang Byung-sam, reviews your weekly summaries before they travel up the chain. On the 3rd week, he opens your document, changes 2 figures upward with a pen to align with the field reports, and hands it back. 40 seconds. No explanation. You understand completely. You begin maintaining 2 working documents. The accurate analysis goes into a locked drawer in your office. The adjusted version travels upward. You know the lock provides no security in this environment. You maintain the document anyway. Not as evidence, not as protection, as a private record that the distance between what is true and what is reported has a specific number, and you are one of the few people in this building who knows what it is. Stanley writes from Sariwon. He has a daughter now. She is 7. She likes drawing. The letter contains a description of a drawing she made, a dog, very tall legs apparently, anatomically ambitious for a 7-year-old. You sit with this letter for a long time, not because of what it contains, because of the life it contains. A factory, a wife who knows how to use spices, a daughter with anatomically ambitious dogs, a walk to work along a river, an existence that is small in the way that lives outside of institutions are small, which is to say, it is entirely his own. You put the letter in the drawer next to the accurate document. They can keep each other company. Level 9. The Chair. You are 51 years old, 2 gold stars on your epaulette, rows of merit decorations across your chest. Jungjang. Lieutenant General. You attend meetings at a compound on the northwest edge of Pyongyang. Phones surrendered at the gate. No written notes leave the building. The topics are unlike anything in your prior career. Submarine patrol routes in the East Sea. Missile battery readiness posture along the western coast. Contingency planning matrices for specific border scenarios that are described in language so indirect that someone outside this room would not understand what is being planned. At one meeting, a chair is empty. General O. Sakman sat in that chair for 11 years. He is not present. His name is not mentioned. The meeting begins on time. You do not look at the empty chair for more than a moment. You learned this specific discipline at 20 years old, watching a patrol rest stop, where a man mentioned his cousin's factory. You learned it again at 33, watching Yoon Chol-jen's analysis become a private meeting. You have been learning it for 31 years, and looking at the empty chair for a moment is the correct amount. 3 weeks later, through an indirect channel, a carefully worded comment from a senior aide that is not repeated, you learn that General O made a statement in a closed briefing that was documented as reflecting insufficient confidence in strategic leadership judgment. He has been reassigned to a non-operational position in a remote Ryanggang province facility. No classified access. No presence in Pyongyang. 58 years old. 36 years of documented loyalty. 1 sentence. Wrong room. Wrong audience. You think about Oh Guang mentioning his cousin's factory on a patrol break 31 years ago. You think about Yoon Chol-jin's analysis that was too detailed. You think about Major General Kang's pen crossing your figures in 40 seconds. Every career-ending moment you have witnessed across 34 years of service was not caused by incompetence. It was caused by a visible gap between what a person actually believed and what the system required at that exact moment. General O's gap was 1 sentence after 36 years of producing no gaps at all. At the next advisory meeting, you arrive 7 minutes early. You maintain the expression that decades of practice have made indistinguishable from conviction. You speak when asked. You use the correct language. You do not pause where pausing would be noticed. The summons comes on a Wednesday at 6:50 in the morning. 2 officers from the General Political Bureau. Composed. Polite. The language of administrative procedure. A review has been initiated. A missile systems readiness evaluation that passed through your core-level command 22 months ago. The operational readiness rate for a surface-to-surface battery in your 2nd Division was reported at 91%. An internal audit places the accurate figure at 73. That figure was submitted by a division commander, passed through your directorate, and forwarded to the general staff in a consolidated summary. Your name is on the summary as the certifying authority. The review runs 9 weeks. You are housed in a government facility in southern Pyongyang. Clean, heated, quietly isolated. Your driver does not come. Your aide does not call. No classified briefings. No operational networks. No information channels of any consequence. The isolation is not accidental. It is the punishment. At the end of 9 weeks, a junior aide delivers a single document without making eye contact. Senior Advisory Role. KPA Regional Military Education Facility, Hamhung, South Hamgyong Province. You are not imprisoned. Your rank is not formally revoked. The paperwork calls it a reassignment aligned with current service requirements. Within 3 weeks, your name is removed from the General Staff's Active Personnel Registry, a training doctrine framework you co-authored, still in use across 4 military districts, is reissued in an updated edition. Your name does not appear on it. You are not erased dramatically. You are edited out quietly from the record of a structure you served for 39 years. In Hamhung, you teach operational command doctrine to lieutenants in their early 20s. They sit in neat rows. They take careful notes. They address you respectfully. They have no idea who you were. You wake at 4:30 in the morning out of 39 years of habit. You read the political briefing circulars. 3 days late. Summarized. No classified attachments. One morning, a letter arrives. It is from Stanley. His handwriting has changed slightly the way handwriting changes when a person's hands have been doing manual work for decades. The letter is short. He says his daughter is 21 now. She works at the same factory he does. His wife is well. The river still smells the same in early morning. He says he heard you were back in Hamhung. He says the market on Cholima Street still has the stall with the good corn cakes on the eastern end, and he suspects you remember it. He does not say I am sorry about what happened. He does not say the system consumed you. He does not say 39 years. He says corn cakes on the eastern end of Cholima Street, which is, in the language the two of you built across 4 decades of letters that contain nothing dangerous, exactly the same thing. You put the letter down. You look out the window of the room in the facility in the city where you were born. That evening, a young lieutenant falls into step beside you on the path around the facility grounds. He asks what separates an officer who advances from one who does not. You look at him for a moment. You say knowing the difference between what you believe and what you say. He writes it in his study journal. He will interpret it as advice about ideological discipline. He is not wrong, but what you mean, what 39 years of service inside a system built to extract loyalty from the people who give it has left you knowing, is something no rank and no evaluation and no document ever stated clearly. The system was never designed to reward loyalty. It was designed to consume it, carefully, completely, at every level, until nothing is left to give. The officers who climbed highest were not the most loyal. They were the most precise about when to display it and when to conceal it, and when to ensure that someone else's name sat one line above theirs on a document before the order arrived. You were precise about that for a very long time, until you were not. You go inside. You write Stanley back. You tell him you remember the corn cakes. You tell him the river here is different from the river there, but it is still a river. You tell him you are well. Between the two of you, across 40 years of letters that contain nothing dangerous, this is how you have always said the things that mattered. It has always been enough. It still is.